How's it going? You guys having a good time? Or should I say, how's it going, eh? I love Canada. I'm thrilled to be here. I met the folks from Accelerate last year when I was speaking at the Traction Conference in Vancouver. And they asked me to come up here. And I do my best to travel and try and bring the message of what we try to do at GrowthX to help tech ecosystems like yours develop so that your entrepreneurs can stay home and help their own communities, opposed to coming to the most expensive city in the world, where I live, to be close to their capitalists. They can be close to their customers and their support system at home. So a little bit about us, quickly. GrowthX is an ecosystem. We're not a product, we're not a service. Over time, we've identified that the best way to help founders is to fund them, help them grow, and then develop the talent that wants to work in and around them, and then work with larger companies who want to do business with them. And in addition to that, GrowthX Gives is our nonprofit arm that targets at-risk youth and gives them entrepreneurship as a path. We've started this in San Francisco. We're now launched in Dallas, Phoenix, Nashville. We'll be announcing a partnership with a large Southeast Asian country very soon to bring our ecosystem to them. Because it's our belief that it's easier today to start a company than it is to grow one. It's easier to build a product than it is to sell it. And that the new valuable rarity in the market will be market development, not product development like it has been for the last 40+ years. We now live in this age of applied technology, which means, as a great example, the first time I started a company, I raised $8.5 million to develop a minimum viable product. 18 years later, I could build that same product for about $200,000. So now, as investors, we're putting the same amount of money into more companies, but less to each, and saying, all right, what can you do with it? Show me that you can execute. So GrowthX started as a seed stage venture capital fund, because these are the facts. 70% of funded startups fail. 8 of the top 10 reasons they fail are related to markets and people. Only 20% have anything to do with product. So stop talking about your product and start talking to markets about your problems and their problems. Yet, through the course of all this, a lot of founders are great. They focus on product. So what we've done is we created an accelerator program called a market accelerator as opposed to a product accelerator. It's focused on helping companies develop markets and raise revenue, as opposed to developing products and raising money. So it unfolds in this three-phase approach we call market discovery, market messaging, and then outreach and execution. And what I've observed over the course of doing this for many years is that while products and markets are unique, the path to product market fit is not. Every company needs to do the same things. They may not realize it at the time, but in retrospect, they have to go through the same set of things to get to the truth as quickly as they can. So we invest in companies with early customers, early revenue, with a clear path to product market fit, and we help accelerate their path to get there using this approach. Now, during the course of that, the 2 areas where I see most companies struggle have nothing to do with what they know or what they're able to do, but they have to do with how they behave. A startup is just a group of people, and how those people behave and how they respond to the market is the key difference. So there's 2 areas of our process where I see most people fall down, and that's what I want to talk to you about today in terms of analog growth hacking. The first is trying to find the right people to talk to, and then the second is having the right kind of conversation, because every company has a limited amount of time, money, and resources to execute. And what I don't like are the emails that come in and say, we're shutting the company down because we weren't able to raise more money. No. You're shutting it down because you pissed away the money we gave you. You're spending the time with the wrong people, having the wrong conversations, at the wrong time, about the wrong shit. You need to be focused on what customers want, and you need to figure out who your right customer is at that time. So, the first thing we do is focus on Mr. Right now, not Mr. Right. Get clear on what your next market milestone is, How many customers do you need over what period of time? How much revenue do you need to generate? How much market feedback do you need on an MVP? How many pilots? How much market validation in which sector or segment? Whatever it is, reverse engineer your funnel from the bottom up. Everything's a funnel. And if you need 5 customers in the next 3 months, reverse engineer it, hypothesize the amount of conversion rate at each level, and then get clear on who are the best customers to talk to right now. And then make sure you instrument the tools necessary to track it. And then layer on an extra level of complexity, which is, okay, now I know that these 100 companies are the ones that I hypothesize I can do business with today. Figure out which ones give you the highest likelihood of doing business in the shortest period of time possible with the least amount of effort, with the highest revenue return. Make sense? All right. So if you do that, you'll live to fight another day. Half of this battle is just staying on the field long enough to learn. And most of us have a hard time doing that. So you develop an ideal customer profile. You define inside of that profile, or 2, depending on your resources, who you want to talk to. Because don't forget, as market developers, there's probably 1, 2, maybe 3 of you. And there's 1 million customers out there. And when you raise money, you tell everybody how big your market is. But you can't talk to everyone. You don't have time. And every time you're talking to somebody that you shouldn't be talking to, you're wasting an opportunity and resources in the wrong area. And you need to be focused. And we all love it when people talk to us about our product and how interested they are in it, but it doesn't mean they have the ability to do business with us within the time allotted for that market milestone that we just talked about. So once we do that, now we actually have to have a real conversation with people. And digital growth hacking is great, data acquisition is awesome, but customer acquisition is awesomer. And that starts with having a real conversation with prospective customers about the things that matter to them. Nobody cares about your product. They care about the problems you solve for them. So have the conversation in that way. Growth is a mindset, and it starts with having a conversation that's effective. So how do you do that? How do you structure a conversation in the right way? You've got to shift your mindset first. So this is my conversation graveyard. These are the 5 tombstones of the things that I want to die a very public death. The first one is rejection. So at GrowthX, we're all about trying to get to the truth as quickly as possible, whatever that truth is. What you do with that truth is up to you. How you react as opposed to how you act is going to determine whether or not you're successful in this process. And we try to take the word rejection and replace it with the word feedback. And think about what that does to your mind and how you behave if you just think about feedback as a gift. Here, I made this. What do you think? I'd love to know if I can help you. My job is to help you be successful. I've hypothesized a certain amount of value based on my research. I've helped others like you. I'd love to have a conversation with you and learn. Okay? So replace rejection with feedback. That's number 1. Closing. Closing is not a thing. It's not a tactic or a manipulation or a trick. Closing should be the byproduct of being fully immersed in helping other people get what they want. And if you do it the right way, it just happens. But it starts at the beginning. Selling is helping. Okay? Growth comes from helping other people get what they want. Don't think about closing. Don't be transactional. Be relational. Focus on giving people what they need, and you'll get there faster. Scripts. I hate scripts. Scripts are one way. They're not conversational. So get into a conversation flow. Create a conversational structure where you can touch all the points you need to touch. But human interaction is dynamic. This is all about talking to humans. Cold calling. I didn't say calling is dead. I said cold calling is dead. We now live in a time where we have so much access to information. We can find out so much about people. Hannah was up here talking to you about ways in which you can enrich data to where I can know more about you, what you do, what you like to eat, where you like to go, the things you bought in the past, the things you're thinking about buying in the future, where your pains are, what job you perform, etc., long before I ever reach out to you. So do the work. Take the time. Go slow to go fast. Do the work, put your time in so that you can deliver real insights when you begin to reach out to your customers or your prospects, so that you stand out. Because I promise you, 9 out of 10 people that are reaching out aren't doing that work. Think about, on your hand, how many cold emails or cold calls have you received over the years that actually stand out as meaningful, relevant, and useful? You can probably count them on one hand, right? So if you actually do that work, it's not cold, it becomes warm. Objection handling. I don't believe people have objections. I don't believe buyers create objections. I believe sellers do. Sellers create objections by offering up solutions too soon. They're not focused on the problem, they're focused on their product. They're not thinking about their market, they're thinking about their product. And between product team and market, in my experience, market wins every time. So you need to get real about that. 90% of what we take to market is wrong. Just accept it and hope to be 89% wrong tomorrow based on the information you learned today. So stay away from objections. Focus on resolving concerns. Humans have concerns. They need to be acknowledged, addressed, and resolved in order to move forward. So starting with that, as we enter this approach, we want to rather be focused on understanding versus being understood. So you make it about them, you start on their side, and you walk your way in with a mindset of seeking first to understand. In order to do all that, you've got to understand a couple of things. First, you need to understand why people buy, you need to understand how they buy, and you need to understand who buys. So in business anyway, with consumers, there's an emotional number 5. So if you're B2C, there's a lot of emotional approaches that go into the elements of value. But in business to business, there's only 4 reasons companies buy. To make money, save money, create a competitive advantage, or stay out of prison. Compliance, risk. So as you start to develop your value propositions, not your selling props, but your value props. In other words, what you do for me, not what you do, you need to tie them to one or more of these 4 things. And then you need to help your customers, prospective customers, see that as well. So never forget that. Every value proposition you ever create needs to be tied to these, if it's truly valuable. Now, how do people buy? So a great author and writer, Dr. Neil Rackham, observed 35,000 sales interactions over a 10-year period. And he wrote a book about it called Spin Selling. And the reason I love it is it's data-driven. And what he noticed as he recognized patterns about how people sell and how people buy is every human goes through the same 4 steps in their buying process. First, they have to recognize a need, right? Oh shit, I broke my phone, I need a new phone. I've incanted, I've clearly stated, I have a need. I recognize that that need is there. Once I do that, then I go out to evaluate my options. Do I want to buy the same phone? Do I want to buy an Android versus an Apple? What are my options? And you evaluate those. Then you get into resolution of concerns. What's the warranty? What happens if it breaks? Last time I bought one of these things, it crapped out too soon, and do I want to do the lease? Do I want to buy? So before they actually make a decision, before you make a decision, you get your concerns resolved. And then once you make that decision, all future decisions are informed by that prior decision to some degree. Make sense? So here's where things go weird and sideways, and it's a natural thing for us as product-focused people talking to a market to want to do this, especially when our companies and our investors and our organizations put pressure on us to close business, is we want to get to the decision as soon as we can. Because we know they have a need, right? If we've done the research and we've hypothesized the value, we know they have a need. But it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what they think. They have to recognize the need. They have to seek their own truth. You can tell your kid the stove is hot, don't touch it, but until they do it themselves, they don't really believe you, do they? The same thing applies here. And where Dr. Rackham noticed the difference between good salespeople and great salespeople or sales organizations is the best sales organizations, the best marketers, the best companies spend 80% of their time on the needs recognition phase. 80% on average. So if you have a 6-month sales cycle, you're spending 4 to 5 months making sure that everybody who's involved in the process recognizes a need. Because if you don't, the same thing we've all experienced happens. How many of us did these deals we've had high probability for 6 weeks, 6 months, and all of a sudden they go dark? And you don't know why, and you don't know what happened. You have a great relationship, you'd wine them and dine them, you'd done all sorts of things. Everybody said, yeah, we're in, we love this is awesome, and then they disappear on you. It's because they never really recognized a need. And the challenge is, in today's society, people won't tell you the truth because they don't like conflict, and they don't want to hurt your feelings. So they will say everything to avoid telling you the truth. And it's your job and your responsibility to get to that truth as quickly as you can. So you have to take an approach that allows you to do that. Creating a safe environment for people to give you real feedback. Not worrying about rejection, but focusing on feedback as a gift. And in demonstrating that to people so they feel safe about telling you the truth. Because the second best answer is no. Wouldn't you rather know now as opposed to 6 weeks or 600 man or woman hours later that these people have no intention of doing business with you? So you can move on to somebody else, especially if you've got a limited amount of time, money, and resources to do it. So it's super important that you spend your time on needs development. And if you do that, the rest of the process goes faster, the objections go away, closing happens as a byproduct of this experience, and all the data supports it. And while that book is 30 years old, I get it, technology changes, but human behavior does not. We all still behave the same way. We just have different devices and ways of expressing it today. So focus on helping people develop and recognize a need. Now, how do you do that? I'm glad you asked, Sean. Okay. In order to do that, the first thing you have to understand, the next thing you have to understand, is who buys in an organization. So in B2B, especially at the enterprise level, it's always been my focused area. My partner founded Match.com. He does all the business and consumer stuff. But in my area, the average number of people involved in a buying process is 6.8, I think is the new number. So they all have different profiles and buyer types. And you need to recognize those, map them against the humans that you're talking to, and then address them with the right value hypothesis and help them recognize a need. The first is the economic buyer. Obvious, right? They write the check. There's usually only one of them, no matter what they tell you. The economic buyer usually shields him or herself with other people, and they'll tell you that they write the checks. And I'm not talking about procurement and purchasing people. I'm talking about the people that own the budget, right? Then there's a user buyer. Only in technology do we call our customers users, us and drug dealers. The people that actually use the product. They're the ones with the real pain, the pebble in their shoe. They've got a job, they have a pain, you've hypothesized a certain amount of gain, you talk to them about that. They know less about the spreadsheet, and they know more about the job that they perform. The technical buyer. This is an interesting one that a lot of people overlook, but those of us that have been in this long enough recognize it. The technical buyer can't say yes, but they can say no. And they can blow the whole thing up because they need to evaluate what you're doing for technical fit. They're usually the ones with the largest amount of technical concerns, and they're usually engaged way too late in the process, and they feel disrespected at the same time. And they will take that out on you in very passive-aggressive ways if you're not careful. So get them involved sooner. These are the kinds of people you deliver technical content to. Yes, this system, our open API works with this over here. We're SAS 70 compliant, we're ISO, we're whatever, right? But you get those folks involved sooner in the process. And then ultimately the champion buyer, the champion or the coach. That's one of the other three, and you should strive to make everyone your champion, by the way, because they will tell you the truth. They will give you the honest insights about what's going inside an organization, what the politics are like, where the power base is, what roles of influence people have, and you map your accounts against that. And then you begin the conversation. But it starts with a framework, not a script. Before you enter that conversation, do the work, do the research, know the people you're talking to, know the individuals, know their roles, know the things that you can learn about them before you have that live engagement, know the questions you want to ask Don't ask yes or no questions. They kill conversations. Don't say, is this a good time to talk? Because I can't wait to say no. Create a conversation flow. Prepare it. Know what you're about to talk about and why. And give people a reason. You have to earn the right to get to the truth. People will not tell you the truth if you haven't earned the right. You earn the right by doing your homework. You earn the right by respecting their time and place and position. You earn the right by giving them the power. You earn the right by being clear that you hypothesize a certain type of value and you're curious to know whether or not you can help people. That's how a conversation gets set up. It needs to be run. We now live in an area where we've never been more interconnected and have never had access to more information, but we've never been less interpersonal. It's maddening. People don't know how to talk to humans anymore. I just saw a research study come out of the University of Michigan. 48% of millennials value a text conversation as much as a human conversation. The bots are going to take over, and our kids are not going to be prepared to differentiate themselves from AI with EI, emotional intelligence. How do you have a conversation? How can you make it efficient, respectful, dynamic, interesting, and, oh, by the way, useful for everybody involved? It's a lost skill. And the soft skills business. Why do they call them the soft skills when they're the hardest to master? Our entire education system was built on an industrial era to help people work in factories. That's not the world anymore. We have to change that. All right, I'm off my soapbox. All right, so attitude, mindset. As you enter that conversation, do not enter it to sell. Enter it to seek fit. You've done your homework, you've hypothesized that you might be able to help someone, you'd love to know if that's the case, and then behave that way. Try to find fit. Don't focus on anything else. Okay? Create that value hypothesis that's around what you do for someone. I've hypothesized this kind of value because I've helped people like you. I'd love to know if I can do the same thing. Do you have a few minutes to chat? Did I mention a product or a market? No, that works in every scenario. But then you have to follow through. Okay? And get rid of the damn scripts. They kill conversations. So it's all about getting the truth as quickly as possible. To sum it up, develop your hypothesis, define the value that you bring to the conversation, and then ask the question, can we work together? Is it worth continuing this conversation? Okay? The second best answer is no, so you can move on as quickly and respectfully as you possibly can. And that no might not just be no, it might be not now, because you have a market milestone to hit. And if this person can't do business with you for another year, and you've got to get those 5 customers in the next 3 months, as I said earlier, then it's not a fit right now. Let's have a conversation in 9 months, because I have a 90-day sales cycle, and move on to the next one. So, how do you develop the need? This is the tactical and practical. This is called the SPIN framework. This was developed by Dr. Neil Rackham and his team as a way to respond to the fact that the needs recognition is the most critical element of making a decision. It's often been said that investigative journalists are the best salespeople. Why? Because objectively, their job is to get to the truth. And it should be yours as well. And if you believe what I said, if you have a growth mindset instead of a fixed one, if you believe feedback is a gift and you don't pay attention to rejection, if you believe that every day is an opportunity to be a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all, then using this process gives you an opportunity to get to that truth as quickly as you can. So it's an acronym, SPIN. Stands for situation, problem, implication, and need. What's the situation? How do you do business today? How do you perform this function I hypothesize I can help you with? What are the problems associated with it? And then how do you quantify those problems? In other words, what's the impact on your business? Right? Now you're tying it back to those 4 reasons why a company buys. The implication is all about, well, it costs me time, costs me money, it puts me at risk, I don't have a competitive advantage, I'm losing out to somebody else. And then ultimately, the needs payoff. Hypothetically, based on the way you do business today, the problems associated with it, and the impact financially on your business, what would a solution look like for you, and how would it benefit you? Not what would mine look like. You haven't earned the right to ask that question yet. If you do ask that question, guess what? You're right back to objection handling. And you're in the conversation graveyard by yourself, because I won't be there. Right? Hypothesize. What would a solution look like and how would it benefit you? That's the needs payoff. This process can take 30 seconds or 30 months. And you might have to do it over and over and over again until you get to where you need to go. And if they don't see they have a problem and they don't clearly state it, then you can't help them. And this is a busy slide, and you guys will get the slides afterwards. So don't take pictures of slides, just take them with me, please. Just kidding. On the left is the process that you take yourself through. On the right are the qualification criteria that you use to determine whether or not you should continue to have more conversations. Right? So you start with getting your customers. If you look in the center, the two big boxes in the middle, implied needs and explicit needs, those are the key things for you to take away from this. Your customer must state to you that they do in fact have problems. The words need to come from their mouths and from their fingers, not yours. Okay? And then they also have to explicitly state that yes, they in fact do have a need and it would be great to solve for that need before you do anything else. And then on the right is what we call BANT. It's an old IBM trick. It works very well. It stands for budget, authority, need, and timing. You need to assess for those things at some point. You may not be able to do it in the first conversation or the 10th, but at some point you have to distinguish between people who have the willingness to do business with you and those that have the ability to. And this is where people go sideways, because they have a great conversation, they find a champion, they might find an innovator, an early adopter in an organization that has no power, no budget, no authority. They might have a need, but they don't have any of the rest of it. And so how we qualify it is moving it from a qualified conversation to a continuing conversation or into a real qualified sales accepted opportunity is N+1. A need plus one of the other things. And if they have those things, then we feel like we can move it forward. And here's the kicker to all of this. You ready? Here's the money slide. The last thing you do is demo your product, not the first. I don't even like it when people use that as a stage in their CRM or their funnel. Demo, demo, demo. Nobody cares about your product. They care about the problems you solve. And if you talk to them about that, you're going to get to the truth faster. And then, by the way, when you actually do the demo, it's much more interesting. Because now you can focus it on the problems and the needs and the implications that you just discussed in that conversation, can't you? And you're not doing the same vanilla thing over and over and over and over again. Demo monkey, demo monkey, demo monkey. And it's meaningful. And then as you do those demos at every section with every main idea, stop, pause, ask questions, and listen. And learn. And be a little more right today than you were yesterday based on that information. Growth is a mindset. It's my favorite movie growing up, true story. I can do Bob and Doug all day. So at GrowthX, we're all about helping you get to the truth as quickly as possible, and we want to build a future we all want to live in, and I hope Ottawa does its best to support its community of entrepreneurs and innovators so that they can stay here and develop your market instead of mine. Thank you all.